Welcome to the MEF2C cast, a podcast dedicated to educating, supporting, and building community around MEF2C haploinsufficiency syndrome.
The MEF2 Cast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Views expressed are those of the host and guests and not necessarily of the podcast or its sponsors. This is not medical advice. Consult a healthcare professional for medical concerns.
Alrighty, hi everybody. Welcome to the MEF2C cast. We are here with Jennifer and Kieth Aguirre, who are mom and dad to Maddie. How are you guys today?
We're good.
Yeah, we're doing great.
Doing well.
All right, can you start by just telling us a little bit about your family?
Well, we have 3 kids. All of them are grown, including Maddie. She's the one impacted by MEF2C. She's the third out of the 3. My oldest is 26. Our middle child is 22.
That's right.
And Maddie's 19.
Awesome.
We've been married 28 years, 27, 28. We lost count.
Live in Colorado Springs?
Yeah.
Cool. Very
We're
awesome.
originally from Texas. We moved to Colorado Springs about 11 years ago when Maddie was 8 or 9.
Right.
I really can't remember now. You caught us at a low memory day.
Did the resources available for Maddie have any impact on your decision to move to Colorado Springs? Why did you guys decide to move?
At the time, we weren't really aware of the resources. The decision to move was based more on, believe it or not, the CBD oil. And
Mm,
there were a couple of factors. At that time, I think Maddie was 8. She was probably 7 or 8 when we moved. And at that time, we really did not have good control of her seizures at all. And we had heard about the CBD oil, and we really tried every intervention there was available, and we didn't know what Maddie had. At the time, she wasn't diagnosed with MEF2C. So when we moved here, services were just a benefit. We had no idea they existed. So Colorado does it really well. It was a big difference from what she received in Texas. Where she had 15 minutes of speech in Texas that we had to fight tooth and nail for. Here, we moved here, and 3 weeks later, she had 3 hours of in-home speech ready. 3 hours of occupational and physical therapy, everything she really, really needed that we weren't able to get in Texas. So we initially came for the oil, and it was initially just for a year. And then when we found out about the services, we stayed. But the other part of that too is that at the time we didn't really understand the impact of the heat and humidity on Maddie and her seizures.
mm.
And so that was a big revelation for us. And we really realized we can't really function outside of Colorado. Outside of any time that there's heat and humidity, she really declines. So there's regression and lots of issues. So that was a kind of a long answer, but there were multiple factors. Yeah. So we stayed.
Yeah, I know that in the MEF2C community and otherwise in special needs communities, there are a lot of people that specifically move to Colorado for those reasons, which is why I asked the question. And, even the CBD oil on itself is still kind of the same angle, if you will, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
but so maybe to kind of start from the beginning here, can you just kind of tell us about Maddie's life and sort of how you've arrived at your diagnosis?
Yeah. Well, Maddie she wasn't planned. She was a surprise. And, we weren't planning on having a third child, and he was actually already scheduled for the procedure to prevent that. And we were already pregnant with Maddie. We joke sometimes and say, well, it was meant to be. It was divine intervention because we had no intentions of having her. And little did we know how much she would impact our lives. But when she was born, or before she was born, the first thing that I noticed was she stopped growing at 36 weeks at gestation. And the OBGYN was concerned. She ordered a ultrasound and they diagnosed her with IUGR. So going into the birth, we were a little bit concerned, intrauterine growth retardation. So there was a stall in her growth. So we were worried already going into the birth. So, when she was born, I asked, is she okay? Because I had this feeling that something was off. And I just, thought something's just not right. I just don't feel right. And he kept saying, no, the doctor said everything is fine. She's fine. We went home, and the very first thing we noticed was she had trouble nursing. Like, she just could not swallow. It was very different from my other children. I was very, very experienced with my other two kids. They were, um, just easy peasy, like completely different. And she choked a lot. She had trouble swallowing. And the other thing that we noticed early was my grandmother had noticed that Maddie did not look at me while she was feeding. Like, she looked above, like whenever someone was holding her, she always looked above the head, like she could see something above your head. And I thought, that's just so odd. She never makes eye contact with us. Like, I just, and then it quickly moved into just 12 hours every day of colic. And from
Wow.
colic, she just wasn't sleeping. We just could not figure out what, the sleep was already an issue. We had no idea what was to come. We thought, okay, this is just the early baby stages. This was just going to out. So I noticed about 6 months that Maddie started having head drops. So I would put her in she couldn't sit. She never really, she didn't really sit until she was about 2 or 3. And, I think the sleep deprivation really prevented us from being aware and as keen as we needed to be. Didn't really realize what was happening. And we were really busy with the other two kids. And I took her to the pediatrician. The pediatrician would say, "Well, just give her more blanket time. She's the third, but she's in the car seat a lot." I thought, fair enough. So we would put her on the blanket and, try to do head time, but she could not lift her head. And if we put her in a bouncy seat or she had anywhere where she was sitting up, her head would just, it would almost violently flop over. And I just thought, and then it was just sleepless nights. Like, we'd put her to sleep, we'd put her down in her crib, and she would wake up 30 minutes later and be awake for 72 hours. I mean, like, the baby never slept. And so we were slowly starting to decline. And in that time, he had a heart attack and was consulting and traveling. And so I had the newborn baby, and he was with a very unusual early heart attack.
Probably from the sleep deprivation in part.
Yeah, it was from a strep infection, but they still had to do, it was, all of our immune systems were obviously taxed at the time. And anytime Maddie got any sort of cold that the kids would bring home from school, she would go into a deep respiratory issue, required breathing treatments, so it was always a lot of monitoring. I thought that was very odd as well. At the time, just being an experienced mother with two other kids, I'd never seen a baby have so many respiratory issues. So at about 8 or 9 months, I noticed her eyes were acting odd. Like one would kind of float away, like at a distance. So I took her to the pediatrician. Pediatrician said, let's refer you to an ophthalmologist at Texas Children's. So it turned out it was like a neuro ophthalmologist that we managed to get an appointment at 12 months. And at the time, Maddie was still not sitting. She was not eating. She was still choking on milk and, just a lot of issues that we compensated for, right? Where we were constantly holding her. Like, we just didn't think, that this child, was, we were just, trying to do life and try to keep life going for our other two kids and just kind of bringing Maddie along, on the tail. And we went into the ophthalmologist's office after we waited for a long time for this appointment. And he said, have you had Maddie examined by, what did he say, a geneticist? And we said, for what? What would be the reason for that? And he said, well, do you think she looks like the other kids? But we turned around and looked at our other two kids who were in the office, and we looked at her and we said, well, no. He said, well, he called it something like there was some sort of study of facial features. And he said, Maddie's features indicate to me that there's something you might want to look into a little more in depth here. This is not just strabismus, which was the diagnosis and the surgery that followed. So from that point on, she was, that summer, she was not sitting. She was already 15 months old. She could crawl, she could walk, she could stand for a few minutes, but then fall down. So we were carrying her everywhere. She couldn't sit in a chair. I had to tie her into a chair to sit. I tried to put her in a preschool and she couldn't keep up with the other kids. So at 18 months, we managed to get a neurology appointment. And they did a 30-minute EEG and said, yeah, we detect seizures, but we don't want to put her on medication because it might delay her already. So at the time, they were concerned about her development. Uh, so at 18 months, we had some suspicion that something was going on. And then it was just downhill from there. There was just, we really just after age 2, we really lost Maddie. She just kind of disappeared from awareness. Like it was almost as if she were deaf. Like she didn't really wasn't really with us. Would you say that's the? I don't want to manage to get it. Everything was 6-month increments. So, but we managed to get into the geneticist at age 3, and they basically neurologists and geneticists said, she has some sort of genetic something going on. We don't really know what it is. In 5 or 6 years, the technology will be available where you can get the test and see exactly what gene mutation you're dealing with. But in the interim, there's really nothing we can do. So my husband asked the geneticist, if this were you, what would you do? And he said, I would just get her into any therapy you can afford and just go from there because there's nothing you can do. And the neurologist told us that our future was that, just from his experience with neurological conditions, it's a pretty grim future. So we went home at age 3 with this information. We didn't know what to do. We were just really at a loss. So for the years that we stayed in Texas, we did not have a diagnosis and we just really attacked Maddie from a one of the things that I noticed as a baby and a child was that whenever Maddie had a fever, her skills increased. And so I connected with the moms in the autism community who um, were treating their children with autism with a lot of the biomedical interventions. And so that's what we did. Right. We really had no place to go. We didn't know there was a syndrome. We didn't know. We were told it was atypical Rett syndrome. So there was some similarities and crossovers there. So whenever Maddie had a fever or she was getting sick, it was like something would sort of engage her immune system and she could walk suddenly or sit in a chair without falling over. So I thought if I could attack it with biomedical interventions, there would be, and we were seeing lots of progression and then regression, right? So um, we didn't start treating the seizures until she was 4 or 5. And the sleep deprivation was really significant. It was bad. So I would drive her around in the middle of the night so the kids could sleep to go to school because she was up all night every night. She would never sleep.
Sorry to interrupt. So the seizures, so was she having like absent seizures? Like what was going on exactly?
She had absence seizures. She also had the head drops. I forgot what type of seizures they called those. And she also had I forgot the names of the types of seizures. Not grand mal seizures. Tonic,
Tonic-clonic?
maybe that. Oh, there's a voice. Yeah,
Sorry.
hi. Yeah, I think that was the. It's been so long. Her seizures. Eventually, we did get good control where it would just we just landed on the absent seizures, but those were significant enough during the day that it would disrupt her whole day, right? She was having them so often, every minute, every 5 minutes, she would completely drift away and then come back to whatever she was doing. She had a
So
lot of
when sorry, I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but when
That's
you
okay.
say you lost Maddie, it sounds like she was just having so many seizures that like she just couldn't go through a day. Like she was just such an impediment to her day that she just couldn't function as a child.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
definitely, and I know that so we had there were a lot of medical tests, we did a lot of, um, MRIs and ultrasounds and of her brain, and they diagnosed her with the thinning of corpus callosum, and, she had a heart she wasn't real she didn't walk until she was about 4.5, like, really independently, and then, it was a lot with her bowels and bowel function, and there was a lot with constipation and then explosive type of things. I mean, we should have bought stock in diaper companies because It was a lot. But then, we did at one point, there was a progression. So we did the keto diet, we did GAPS diet, we did SCID diet, we did lots of different, we gluten, dairy free. If she had one little teeny slice of cheese, like a little sliver, she would not be able to sleep for a week. Like it was like it was a very odd, issue with food and her immune system. That was my thought, but she would never show an allergy to any of those things. It was always, just observation, so we had to be very careful and religious about what she was exposed to as far as different types of food. But we did at one point manage to get a few gains in her toileting at age 5. She was never functionally on her own, but through a time schedule. But then as her seizures increased, loud noises, to changes in temperatures, exposure to different chemicals, like there were different cleaning chemicals, that type of thing would really cause more seizure activity. And she lost all of those skills for a long time. Um, so we haven't really, she's 19 now, we haven't really mastered the toileting uh, as well. We're about 30% there. So, but when we moved to San Antonio, we found a wonderful group of parents with kids with special needs. And it was the first time I'd been with other parents whose kids have seizures. And so I learned a lot from those parents, and we got great referrals to the sleep center in San Antonio. And that's where we met Dr. who was a neurologist, and he was really kind of pivotal in helping her get a great medication to help Matt with her seizures. But it really wasn't, it was really more of the heat more than anything, just not really being able to function in that environment. When we came up to Colorado just to kind of see what it was like, and we told the kids it would just be a year. We thought it would just be a year. We were here during the spring when the weather was really cool, and we really could not believe Maddie's functioning, like how well she did outside of the heat and humidity of Texas. It was significant. It was significant where we didn't want to go back. We were just ready to stay. So we ended up moving here, and we found a geneticist here at Denver Children's Hospital. And that geneticist listened very carefully to our story but Maddie's history. And he said, based on the head drops as a baby, he said, I'm going to do a different type of genetic test. So we did that genetic test, and that's when the MEF2C diagnosis came back. So we found out when she was probably around 9 or 10.
Yeah, so that would have been really early on in even diagnosing MEF2C at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now people get diagnosed super early.
Super early.
Right.
And the babies seem to have the intervention with the seizures really early. I still think back and wonder why they didn't give Madeline seizure meds then. Even when with every 30-minute EEG, they
Right.
caught seizure activity, detected it. So, there's things that we look back, and regret not really understanding fully even what a seizure was. We had no idea. We were completely clueless. But yeah, so she was 10 when she got her diagnosis, and finding the group was just it was a godsend because just we finally found our place, like where we understood other parents and some of the experiences that they had gone through, and we found out about Dr. Cowan and the things that they were doing, and understanding a little bit more about where Maddie's mutation was and how it impacted all of her. But the other thing that around age 9 or 10, she also began having a lot of sensitivity to noises. And so right now I'm researching, that's been really the biggest impact, not being able to go out in public with her. She doesn't do well with other children and dogs and loud noises and unexpected. She has to wear headphones, and she's very guarded and cautious, and it's been extremely debilitating as far as, going out in public. She doesn't like voices. I know one of the other parents from MEF2C had sent me some information on MEF2C and the impact on the hearing, the auditory system, that type of thing. And I didn't know if there were other parents out there with similar issues, but it's my understanding that some of the other kids also started showing the hearing issues around the same time as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We haven't I mean, definitely we've talked to people who said that their kids are sensitive to loud noises and things, but we mostly talk to younger parents of younger kids too, because there's just way more of them now
Yeah.
that's being diagnosed. So, um,
How
yeah,
about
that's
how
go ahead.
about
Sorry.
school? Were you able to put her in school, or what was that like?
Yeah, we well, because we didn't really understand, we knew Maddie had this language deficit, and so we kind of thought, well, deficit of language, she has to have autism. It must be autism. And so we put her in an ABA program when she was 4 or 5 instead of public school. Maddie had a lot of behaviors. Like she was a behavior kid. And it didn't go well for her. It was as if, a lot of that, it was just not a good intervention for Madeline. And so I think it really set her back. So we did put her in public school until age 6, and Maddie walked out of the school and I didn't know she was missing. We just realized it was just not a good environment for her. So we had a lot of trouble in public schools. So at the end of first grade, we took her out after we moved to Colorado. And this public school here told us, if you've got a good program at home, keep her at home. It's
Right.
going to be better than what we can give her. And we hired a person to come like 20 hours a week who was a special ed teacher. And I was kind of doing some research on floor play and the importance of, getting engagement. And one of the early recommendations from our geneticist and neurologist in Texas was movement. And they said it was so important and that Maddie's condition was similar to people with Parkinson's, and how they respond to like bike riding. Like it could decrease some of the tremors. Maddie had pretty significant tremors at that time. And so they said, those trimmers, so we went out, and we got her a Ripton bike, and we put blocks on just so she could reach the pedals, and tied her feet and pushed her for 2 years just so she could get that cross movement. We put her on swings and pushed her for hours, and just that proprioceptive, like any input, because movement was so hard for her. And if we just knew that if we could get her to move, that there would be some brain development. And her speech therapist said, when a baby is born and they miss those milestones, like development milestones where they learn to crawl, their brain's not going to develop to adapt to speech. And so, Maddie never had, like, I'm sure, like many of the MEF2C kids, they don't crawl. They don't have this movement that where the brain's connecting and they develop language. And so what can you do? And we did all kinds of exercises and interventions. I mean, you name it, we did it. Horses were a big intervention. We looked for any and every opportunity for Madeline to move. Swim, he was in the pool with her in the middle of winter in Texas just to get her to swim for hours because she was obsessed with water. I mean, she was obsessed with water. It was just the weirdest thing. We had her tested for every genetic. We had her tested for Angelman's and Prader-Willi and Fragile X, and, all of the genetic conditions, because at every different points in time, the geneticist would look at her and he would say, well, maybe, she's gained a little bit of weight. Like maybe we look at Prader-Willi. Well, she's obsessed with water. And let's look at Angelman's, and nothing came back definitive. That was always really frustrating at that time. It was a different time.
Right.
Yeah.
You think the issues with ABA was it just wasn't a good fit for her, or did you just not think it was a good method in general? Because I know there's a lot of different opinions about that in sort of the autism world and MEF2C.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the child. I think that I mean, I don't think ABA in and of itself is bad. The implementation of it can be bad if you have I was often told, if you have a bad ABA therapist who really doesn't understand how to use it, then you've got a bad situation. And so you have to know how to distinguish what's good and bad ABA. Like you have to really, as a parent, educate yourself. And if your child begins to show more behaviors and they tell you you're going to see an increase in behaviors before it gets better, that's not true, right? If ABA is done well, then your child is not going to be learning bad behaviors and then not be able to generalize that out in public. So it's
Right.
yeah, we did have good ABA in home here in the state of Colorado. And we had really great ABA PCBAs who were willing to partner with us as a family, and come into our home, where it really mattered, as opposed to that center-based ABA. It wasn't as good for Maddie. And at the time, we didn't really understand why. But it it really isolated us because she was in this forced environment in this little tiny room, and she's never learned to read or write. She can't recognize colors. So there was a lot of that kind of prompting, but she didn't really have those abilities. And I think it frustrated. But so much has changed since then. I know it's a big controversial topic. I personally, we think that Maddie is there. She's there fully, but she just can't. She's broken, right? It's like having a broken leg. She can't walk, but she just can't tell us how she feels. That type of thing. But
Yeah,
one of
we
the
agree
things that
completely.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
On the lines
they're
of
there.
communication, though, have you ever tried any type of communication device at all with her? Yeah.
Yes, for many years we did PECs and when we moved to iPad and then but Maddie talks now.
Oh,
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
one of the things, like, back in you were saying, you know, in the early days, it's kinda like this blank, like, we don't know if there's someone in there, so to speak, but we always said things, did things, like, we always over-talked, and to this day, she'll come out and say things that were from that time, so I know
it matters
it might right.
what you do.
And that was kind of that decision point we made. Like, we're sitting there, and I was like, "Is there somebody in there?" And there was this, one moment where I was like, I guess, I said clock, and she looked at the clock, but she couldn't move her whole body. But I just felt like she knew what I was talking about. And then from that point forward, we just threw everything we could as far as therapies go. We moved our whole family. We did whatever we could to pretty much reach her. So,
Yeah.
and now she's reached. I mean, in her way, you know, and like now she plays virtual reality headset, plays a gorilla tag and interacts socially.
She
She's
tries
she's right, and she's been
in
learning
her
in her way, and it's been interesting to see that part grow.
Mm.
Because it's like for the first time she gets to play like, like we would in a playground, right? So, but she gets to do that with all these kids virtually. So it's a protected environment, right? So it's kind of crazy. But yeah, so we know that even though at an early age, it seems like, a child's not responsible, that they
they
hear,
are.
Yeah.
they know everything. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
absolutely do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of, with ABA, with people with autism who have gained communication, whether it's speech or through devices later in life, what they say is exactly that. Like say ABA is working on colors. It's like I a lot of times they say like I understand what the colors are. Like that's not the issue. The issue is me being able to express to you
That's
to
right.
understand what the colors are. And then you get locked in this thing of like, and like you said, it depends a lot on practitioners. And we haven't done any ABA, so I'm just talking about what I've heard from other people. But like, oh, you can't move on to this next thing because you don't know your colors. And it's like, well, first of all, I do know my colors, I just can't tell you. And second of all, what does one thing have to do with the other? Like I listened to an interview with parents of an autistic guy who spells, and they were like, "Well, we're not teaching him math yet because he can't tie his shoes." It's like, well, I can't dunk a basketball, but that doesn't mean I can't read a book. You know what I mean? Like those two
Right.
things have nothing to do with each other. But it's great to hear that her language is advanced and everything because we definitely feel the same way that Leo's totally, you know, relatively cognitively normal, little boy. It's
Okay.
just his ability to get his body to cooperate with his
Right.
brain.
And
Well,
I don't mean to interrupt, but I would say what I think is super, super important for parents, young parents to understand is your child is still a child, right? And so they can be over therapied, right? And so this restrictive environment, that's where the trauma comes from. And so I said, why don't we play to Maddie's strengths? Like, what are the things that she's interested in, right? She has obsessions. And so, she'll be hyper focused on Paw Patrol and it's Paw Patrol and only Paw Patrol, and so I tell the ABA therapist when they come into our home, "You work with Paw Patrol and nothing but Paw Patrol all day long." And that's okay because that's how she's going to get gains because she's interested, right? Where
Mhm.
ABA, they were about taking away those preferred activities, making her do other things, and then she's focused on not getting those things, right? So she was never learning. So I reversed it, and I think it's very important to find those things that your child, if you're interested in lights, let them look at the lights. If they're interested in music, find any and every type of music. We have always adhere to that philosophy of making sure that it's something that she's interested in because she's not going to learn if she's not interested in identifying colors with the pen. She's just not,
Mhm.
right? And we've had music therapists come in and say, well, we can't really do music therapy with her because she, didn't point to the letter A. I'm like, she's never going to point to the letter A. She's just not. She just won't. So, I think it's so important to find what your child is interested in. And we've had situations where, and I've always been very keen to listen to the therapist as hard as it's been. When we're not ready for Maddie to move to a certain stage, like we had a therapist come in and say, you guys, you're babying her. You've got to let her grow up. And that was a big moment where I thought, okay, what can we do to let her move past, even though she's still in diapers and she's 12 years old, we've got to let her move to a different level. And we had another therapist, her best friend, come in and say, you know what? She was a CNA and she'd never worked with special needs kids. And she walked in one day after prayer and thinking about it, said, you know what? I think Maddie really needs is a friend. And she walked in, and Maddie had no language at the time. And she said, hey, friend, I'm here to play with you. And that just changed Maddie completely. She had never had a friend, and we didn't even know she needed a friend, right? We just always think that, they still need those developmental, even in the adult world. I can see now where Maddie is needing independence, right? Even though she's still in diapers and she has to be watched 24 hours, she still has those developmental internal milestones. Our children do have those. Like, you have to recognize that as a parent. It's to keep them in the Barbie stage, like begin to introduce them to different types of, activities. I think that makes a big difference for their development, social development.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I like to bring up a lot of times, like, comparisons between MEF2C kids and regular kids. Like, there are plenty of, like, maybe a kid isn't interested in chemistry, but they like to cook. But if you attack chemistry from the angle of, like, food science and, like, this is how the different ingredients interact, and, this is what makes the dough rise, and leavening agents and all this other stuff, suddenly they might develop an interest in chemistry. So, like, with normal kids, you still have to do a lot of these same things. So I like to draw the parallels between the two, because a lot of times it can feel like you've been, like, saddled with this thing, and then everything becomes like, oh, this is this hard thing because of MEF2C, and it's like an easy trap to fall into. But as you
Yes.
said, like, you sometimes have to take a step back and realize, like, they're still just kids, and these issues are not unique to just them.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But so back to the diagnosis. So when you guys got that, how did it make you guys feel? Do you think did you explain it to Maddie? Do you think it made Maddie feel any kind of way? Your whole family in general? Just kind of take us through that.
Oh, we were devastated when we got the diagnosis. It was, we were here in Colorado and we were very isolated. We had left our family and friends, and I think part of that, I think we were really just lost. Like, we just really didn't know. I think we had had this hope that she would grow out of it, that she would develop language, and not having that diagnosis early. I think it was a two-edged sword because it gave us hope, and then we never used MEF2C as an excuse, and so we always held her to a really high expectation,
She had 2 older siblings,
right.
and I was wondered about that big 2 highly social older siblings, and so I could see where, she's just trying to follow along, participate as much as she can because that's what she's accustomed to in some ways, so it's kind of interesting. But, yeah, I know a lot of people, like parents who get diagnosed early. I always think about that, like, you get diagnosed early and, how, like, devastating that would feel as opposed to, like, us, we got diagnosed later, and it's still but it was already
We were already
because my son goes he's like, "So, so what else?" He's all going, "Okay," like, big
that way.
surprise. What else do we know? It was kind of a funny, but yet, it was just, concrete now for sure. But, so I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing about the diagnosis.
Yeah. It didn't stop. It didn't change what we were doing for Maddie. It was a decision that we made as a family when we moved to Colorado. My husband and I, we said, we're going to have to save one of these kids, and we're not going to be able to save them all. One of our three kids, like, who are we going to say we're going to, because it was breaking it. She really broke our family. We depended heavily on other families to give our other two kids experiences in life, vacations, or, you know, just to get away and rest away from Maddie because she was intense. So it was all night, it was all day. They lived in their rooms, and just to get away from her, we depended heavily. So when we moved here, we didn't have that social network. And so I think that was really devastating for everyone. But we chose Maddie because in Houston, a lot of friends and family were beginning to socialize the idea of institutionalizing her, and we just couldn't do it. They saw us. If someone said, "Well, I just can't watch this train wreck happening.
Right.
I can't sit back and see you guys go through this." So
Yeah, that part is interesting because we're in this neighborhood that had its own kind of community in the neighborhood. So, like, and was, like chili cook-offs. It was very outgoing. So we knew each other. Everybody knew each other in that neighborhood. And they knew us before Matt, you know. So then Maddie comes along and it's like it was very difficult, I'm sure, for them to watch, thinking, I know one dad came up to me and says, I'm having difficulty believing in God watching you all. And I was
Oh my
like, "Well, just"
gosh.
I was like, "Just keep watching and let's see what happens." So yeah, it was interesting, and yeah, there was a lot of, guidance, like, "Go ahead, for the sake of the other 2, go ahead and, put her away," and this kind of thing, and I was like, "Well, can you do that to yours?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" I go, "If your child has a car accident tomorrow, can you do that?" And they were like, "No." I'm like, "Exactly."
right,
Wow.
I go, "Plus, that doesn't really create anything in the family." I go, "What we're gonna do is we're gonna do everything we can to help Maddie, and then the other 2 will, they'll understand and become, save them as adults, so to speak, if that makes any
right.
sense."
Because we couldn't
'Cause
imagine going on with
right,
life, and she's away somewhere.
exactly.
Right, how are we supposed to do life like that
Right,
without our sweet little Maddie?
right,
And how are we supposed to continue on? So we made the decision we chose Maddie, and that was the reason we knew the services here. She qualified immediately for the children with extensive needs
right,
waiver, and that gave her community connector, it gave her respite. It gave us a few things as a family that we could not afford in Texas at all.
right, and the weather gave us everything
Everything.
because
The
that
weather.
that changed, like, we live in Colorado Springs near Garden of the Gods, and she could go on a hike, like, longer than, 50 feet, in Houston, it was like
Yeah.
25 feet, it's too humid,
Her
too
lips
hot.
would turn blue and her
Right,
skin would become ice cold.
right,
It's like she couldn't regulate her temperature at all.
right,
We still have that issue. She'll walk outside without a coat. She doesn't understand.
right,
Temperature regulation is still an issue. But the diagnosis was, we just knew we had to, you know, buckle up and get through the years to get to the adult services. We were determined to get to adult.
right.
And it was a really difficult, anguishing battle to get there.
But
With the other two, trying to raise two kids with Maddie was
right,
not easy.
and I told the kids, I said, I go I told them, not like we have a lot of time to talk, but there was times where I would say, I'm not gonna be able to talk to you and tell you everything that I want to, but I'm just gonna show you because that's all we can do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, what better example for your kids than parents who are willing to give up everything for Maddie. And, I mean, like, I don't know your situation, but, like, your kids probably didn't get it growing up, but I would imagine as adults, they understand now. Because like, my parents have I have 3 siblings and they're all adopted. So it's not the same as Maddie, of course, but they had their fair share of issues, and, like, there were times where it seemed really hard growing up, but looking back now, like, I understand how much my parents sacrificed for these 3 kids that they literally, like, my parents got certified to adopt, and then, I don't know, a month or 2 later, the the agency called us and was like, "Hey, we've got this girl whose her behavior's too bad and their family needs respite care." And she showed up, my sister, her head was shaved because she had had lice in her biological home. So I got in the car with her, and my mom told me she was bringing home a little girl. I was confused because I wasn't sure if she was a girl or a boy. But anyway, she never left. And then
Aw.
Right.
a few months later, she had a younger sister and brother, and they came to stay with us for a weekend because they couldn't their behavior, they couldn't handle them either. My brother, the first night he stayed at our house, he woke up at like 4 in the morning, stuffed an entire roll of toilet paper down the toilet, and just kept flushing until my parents woke up and found him. So he flooded the house. But, and then within a year or so, they were all living there. So the point being is they took these kids that just showed up at their house and completely changed their lives around them, and you guys did the same thing with Maddie. So I think that there's a lot of value in I don't think that you, like, quote unquote chose Maddie. I mean, I know you did, but I don't think that you necessarily took away from your other kids through doing that in the long run.
In the long
Right.
run.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right.
No, I'm sure there were a lot of short-term sacrifices, but yeah.
Yes, and I appreciate you saying that. I agree with you. I think that when you're in it, you're in that battle, you don't think
Right.
about the long run and how what that's done for them. I don't know, do you guys have more than 1 child? More than
No,
Leo?
Leo's our first, yeah.
Okay, your fir and that's a whole different dynamic as well,
Right.
the first and not getting to experience those. I don't wanna say there's no normal,
What's
but
Typical.
no.
Yeah, and it's such a I'm trying not to swear. It's such like a mind game with Leo because he is I mean, he's like the size of a 5-year-old. He's gonna be 3 next
Oh,
month.
Right.
But he, people like you look at him based on his behavior and you'd guess like he's maybe a year old. So like I have no idea what a typical kid is supposed to be because I see kids his size, you know, running around and talking and behaving like preschoolers, first graders, and then I see kids at his ability who are much smaller. So I have no basis at all on what a kid is supposed to be like.
right,
Right.
right,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, and then if you had a s I've heard of you and I know other people who've had their first child impacted by something, not necessarily MEF2C, but then they have these other kids and they say, "It's so easy." I have no
Right.
idea.
Right.
Mhm,
Yeah, yeah. And that was a un I think, a lot of our grief, people don't talk about the grief of a special needs parent and how you go through constantly you're going through the cycles of grief. You're going through sadness, you're going through anger, you're going through some cycle of grief all the time. And it's the holidays, it's a birthday, it's something you're not able to participate in. It's you're seeing your families go on vacations and you've never had a vacation with your kids. Right? So you're in this cycle of grief constantly and you're grieving a future and you're grieving your current situation and you're grieving the loss of your current children and their experiences. So it's always something that you're having to do and survival, at the same
Right.
time. So
It's not like grief and like I just I'm only gonna stay in bed today.
mhm.
right, so ever
It's
move
like
out of
you
that.
just gotta keep going. You don't. It's like internal grief, and you just still function. So
Right. And that's one of the with our children, we were grieving losing them while we had them. Right.
right.
And having a family and at the same time we're surviving with Maddie. So now that they've moved out and they're on their own, it's a whole different experience having an only child with
Right.
special needs, right? It's way easier.
Right.
Mhm.
We're with you now.
We're with you.
I'll make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, but we say all that, but then it's also it's hard to explain to people about, you know, those special moments where like God reaches you and finds you and there's a whole different relationship that's occurring that I don't think the typical person pers- gets in this life unless
Mhm.
you child like this. So it's kind of interesting. And because a lot of people say, well, do you wish, she was healed and I'm like, yeah, but now I just think about all the other people out there. Like, I just can't, like, I want to help them. I want to help everybody if I can because of the world that Maddie has shown me. That I thought I know people. I thought I knew humans and people and how everybody lives, and then I realized I didn't. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I wouldn't have changed it for the world because of um those special times where I saw, interventions and miracles occur and things that happen. Is just nobody would believe it. So,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And they bring so many more people into your life that you never would have met otherwise that are the absolute most wonderful people that you'd meet.
that's right.
That's the best part about it, in my opinion. It's just getting to do this type of thing and, talk with you guys, and I've gotten some of, like, my greatest friends because of Leo,
Right,
so
right.
yep, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you're really good friends with one mom
Mhm.
from Canada. Like, we would have never we're from Podunk, middle of nowhere along the Ohio River. Like, I've been out of the country once to Canada. Like, we would never and, we talk to people, you know, not to brag, but this show's been listened to in, like, 29 different countries. Like, we would have never had any interaction with anybody like that, without it. So it's really
What
interesting.
what podunk town on the Ohio River? Because
We are
'Cause she's gonna
I've
know
got
it.
family on
Yeah.
a podunk in a
Yes.
podunk town.
near Wheeling, West Virginia.
Oh, okay. My grandmother, who's since passed, she was from Portsmouth, Ohio, South Shore, Kentucky,
Okay,
which is
gotcha.
that's near I think it's near there.
That's
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
south. We're like,
Same river.
so if you're not from here, I would tell you I'm from Pittsburgh because that's the easiest place
Oh,
to
okay.
picture. Yes.
Okay.
And then if
Okay.
you were from Pittsburgh, I'd tell you I was from Wheeling. And then if you were from Wheeling, I would tell you I'm from Shadyside, which is actually where we're from. But
Okay.
so how did you guys 'cause, like, the things that you were talking about people saying to you, I mean, I've never had anyone say anything quite so frankly. I mean, I think they were just ignorant. I don't think they were intending to be rude. They're being disrespectful. It's just that, like, you have no idea what this is like. So how did you guys deal with that?
Pray a lot. I mean, we really, really
Yeah.
do. I mean, there's really for us, there's been no other way. I don't know, you know, and we've been hurt a lot. We've been hurt and we've gone inward a lot. We've isolated, we've institutionalized with Maddie, because after a certain point, no one understands, right? It's just, it is what it is.
I was just gonna say what happens is, like, we people come, right? People come and they're like, "Let me" that what was
We
it?
want to be a part of your
Yeah,
story
that was a fun like,
and
"Let me
we
be a
want to
part of your
help.
story," and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know I was
Okay.
making a movie."
Yeah.
And they're like and I told them, I go, "Well, that's great." I said, "But it's gonna outlast you."
And
Like
it
Mm,
does.
your thinking is very seasonal. It's a season, and
Right.
it's not a season.
Right.
So,
Yeah. We've had a lot of hurtful things and
yeah.
you do, and that's what my husband always tells me when I'm hurt. He always says, "Don't worry, it's gonna outlast everyone." In other
Right.
words, Maddie will always be what she is, right? Unless this medicine works,
Well,
right?
here we go.
Which
No.
we and we're hopeful, but she's an adult. She's always going to be, and it's always going to outlast the seasons of our friendships. So we've learned to, um,
'Cause some people I've even like, others come and they're more empathetic, right? And after a while, this is just funny. Someone came to us one time and said, "I can't stand it anymore. I can't like, I want it to be fixed, and you can't" like, I can't take the stories. I can't take it anymore. And I laughed. I thought, "Well, that's funny."
yeah,
Like, yeah, but it's and I not that po I try to be encouraging to people. I mean, like, do we have all sorts of situations. Like you go to Costco, we have older people who are like, it's a different mindset, and they're like,
Boomers don't like men.
right, or even older, they're like, "What's she doing out here? She
No,
shouldn't be here
she
at the
shouldn't
store
be here.
with me." And I'm
Right.
like, "Well,
We got
yeah,
the police called in a movie theater and they were
yeah,
ready to handcuff her, and she's 7 years old.
right,
We got kicked out of a cave, because Maddie,
I
you
can't."
know,
Oh,
I,
that's hard to get kicked out of.
yeah, we've been kicked out of places, and I've just been riding down the road, and Maddie's, leaning, she's in her car seat and she's having a seizure, and someone stops me and rolls down my window and yells at me, get rid of that effing retard.
Right,
Like, and we're just driving down the road with the
right,
kids. We've
right,
been kicked out of Chick-fil-A. We've been kicked out of, you know, we have, and the kids, my older two have seen, society's reaction to someone like Maddie. And it's, they have been her greatest defender. Maddie's been slapped by other kids. She's been punched. She's been bitten. She's been, made fun of, telling my daughter that Maddie won't go to heaven because she can't understand. So just
right.
lots of
That's
different
a fact.
societal reactions. You have to build a pretty thick skin,
Right.
I think. We've been kicked out of everything with Maddie because,
My oldest son, he's like, "Don't worry, Dad. We're gonna tell everybody our Netflix series. It'll be like probably about 7 seasons, and we'll explain it all."
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's hard. People don't understand, and you really truly don't understand it until you've lived it.
Right.
And, when you've lived it, you're forgiving any other parent for anything who has a special needs child. I have a friend, Stephanie, she's here in the Springs, and, during COVID, I would just text her to say, "Are you okay? Are you alive? I just need to know that you're okay because I know it's really hard right now." And if she didn't get back to me, I knew. I just know, the parents with kids like ours, there's a lot to be forgiven. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Our our friend Susan, who has a son, Andrew, who's also our friend, who has MEF2C, they refer to those moments as opportunities for education. And sometimes, Susan said, sometimes you educate more aggressively than other times, but you educate nonetheless. So,
Yes. That Susan's a wise person. That's very true.
yes.
Sometimes we overeducated, where there wasn't really anyone who that person didn't care to be educated, right? And, either they're a part of it or not. And, we've
Yeah,
lost a lot of friends.
in my opinion, like, if they're not willing to be educated, that's their own punishment in itself. Like, if they're
Yeah.
willing to go through life being that ignorant, then I wouldn't wanna
Right.
live that life at all, so best
Yeah.
of luck to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
So, let's see here. You said she got diagnosed around 10, sort of. Can you just take us up to now, and then we'll talk about what her life looks like now a little bit?
So you mean after the diagnosis?
Yes.
Yeah. So after the diagnosis, we made a decision that, we weren't, it's not that we were saying Maddie can't ever learn to read and write, right? We just knew that she wasn't going to be Temple Grandin,
Mhm.
right? That just wasn't going to be Maddie. So
Right.
what kind of life can we construct for her? What are her interests? And she loved horses. So I found a lady here in the Springs who had miniature ponies, and she would take those miniature ponies to nursing homes, and they were just the most docile animal. And Maddie loved horses, and she loved equine therapy. She was all in it. But when she met those miniature ponies, it was absolute love for her. And for a few years, we did occupational therapy with the miniature ponies, and we did everything from learning how to brush hair, learning how to take a shower, like all of those life skills. I asked the lady who ran the program to teach her those things, like because Maddie was interested in the horses, she'd pay attention, right? So we worked really hard on life skills. I just said, whatever life skills we can get out of her, we're going to start working now at age 10 because it's going to take 20 years to get her to be able to comb her own hair, right? Or to brush her teeth. And so we moved away from academics and we said life skills because what is Maddie going to really need to know? So that's been our focus for the past 11 years or so.
Right.
Um,
Create your own program.
we created an in-home program. We every opportunity, whether it was a CNA or her respite provider, we all worked from the same playbook. We said, okay, we're working on this skill. Everyone's going to try. We may not get it, but it's okay. We're going to work towards that. Uh, and then in 2018, we lost a lot of her longtime people, and we had some shifts with finances and jobs, and it was
Well,
really just me and Maddie for a
yeah,
long time,
COVID.
and then COVID in
Yeah,
2020.
when COVID hit, which is kind of interesting, but when COVID came about and it was the lockdowns and everybody live in your house and shutting down all that stuff. I think there was a moment like everybody did a big run on the grocery store in the early day, right when the first uh, shutdown kind of happened. And my son was like, "Hey, Dad, now everyone's gonna live how we lived. We're gonna."
In parking lots.
I laughed so hard.
Yeah,
He goes, "We got this. This is what we're accustomed to." I'm like, "I know
yeah.
it's funny."
But we did with when COVID happened, it undid a lot of because we were working really hard on getting
Right.
her out in the community because she didn't want to do the community work. Like getting her used to walking through a threshold without having a meltdown, right? So there were lots and lots of there was years of work we put in getting her just to function, and really our other two kids became caregivers along with us, not in an official capacity, but as opposed to being children, they really were two other pairs of hands, and that was really difficult to see that. So but when they left home, we just, we kind of evolved Maddie into, what kind of life, you know does she have friends, right? Does she have a community? Does she have grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins? Like, who's a part of her life? Who wants to participate? Because that's really what it boils down to. Who wants to be a part of Maddie's life? And so that's what we've focused on, just trying to give her the best life, right? And language.
Well, and
What can we do?
on the language front, what was interesting there was so my Maddie's older sister sings, right? And she was singing from an early age. And so that had this impact where Maddie would, like she would when she talked, she would script, right? Say, just repeat sentences over. So and not really it's not like talking, right? It's not like conversation. But when it came to the songs, she knew every word and inflection of every like and it's in there. Like so the other I guess maybe a couple of years ago or a year ago, we she had a birthday party. We had like a little karaoke and we just started running through all the different Disney songs that are out, and she knew every one of them, which we didn't even know that she knew,
She learned it on
like
YouTube.
the words, like, Little Mermaid, but the Japanese version, she knows the Japanese words, like, she knew it all, and I was like, "That's
Of
crazy."
every obscure Disney
Right,
song that you can
obscure
think of,
ones.
right? She could sing all these
Yeah,
words, but she can't speak it.
right,
So we found that music and getting her inside like a recording booth where
right,
the sound is very concentrated and she can hear her voice.
right, that was
Because I don't think she can hear her voice. I think there's definitely some sort of disconnect. The music therapy made a huge difference for her.
well,
Like
that's what
big difference.
we're calling that music that
It
was our
wasn't official music
right,
therapy.
that was our music therapy, is that because our other daughter had an interest in singing and had access to a recording studio booth through a nonprofit that, um, Maddie would go there regularly and get in the booth and sing, like, the first time, I think it was 3 hours, and then over time, it became a normal, like, yeah, okay, you go for an hour and she gets tired, but she just gave it all, she just and her language really improved after that. So the scripting has stopped, and now she
Mm.
can, give to, she'll say, what do we want for breakfast? Or, like her normal life skills type
But
language.
right, and one of the things that our speech therapist taught us was this was a speech therapist who was with Maddie for many, many years. Like, we had a dedicated person who was on Maddie's program, and she said, a lot of times parents, like, kids will just do vocalizations, and we think, "Oh, they're just vocalizing," right? But if you place a word there for them, in other words, so you're like Maddie used to just scream, like she just screamed, right? And I would say, you want a drink. You're saying drink, or you're saying doll or ball, or right. Like we begin to get emerging language just like you would a baby, but it's at age 10, right? Age 11, age 12. Like we've never stopped with that approach with Madeline, right? I always try to hear, even if it comes out jumbled, we try to hear a word and help her find those words that, that she's trying to recall. So I don't think it's obviously not true that our kids can't talk. And I don't think it's true that her future was grim, as
Right.
her neurologist predicted.
Oh, clearly not.
Yeah,
Right.
because we're trying to give her all of her interest in a happy, disciplined life, where she learns to function and she's proud of her accomplishments. Right? That's what her adult life looks like. And I think at some point we have talked about this, she may want to live independent, not independent on her own, but we
Yeah.
use a lot of YouTube videos as well, like to
Yes.
help educate. We rely heavily on technology. And I just do not agree with parents who say, don't give them phones. Not now the other two kids, no. But Maddie, we give her every access to technology that we can afford. If there's a video game that she shows an interest in, I'll play 18 hours a day for her. If she's going to watch it and be interested in it, we'll facilitate it, right? If there's an interest that she has, we'll bring that technology in for
Well,
her.
and then in that situation, this is back like you talked about money, ABA, like coins or whatever. She did not
Not
understand. Like it's like just a different planet. Does not understand any of
no
that.
concept.
But because of horses, there was this uh, PC game called Star Stables. But it's like a teenager girl kind of game. And so Jennifer started playing this PC game with
Well,
her.
I wasn't playing it. My daughter found it for
Oh,
her.
yeah.
But Maddie, when she saw the horses, she couldn't, she didn't have the dexterity to even handle any kind of remote. Right? She can't do that. But my son would play with her, or my daughter would play with her, and they would teach her how to go and work for something on this horse and earn
Oh,
money.
right.
Right? So then she began to generalize that skill, and we asked the ABA therapist who were coming into the home to say, "Hey, we're going to teach Maddie the concept of money," because we go into a store with her and she wanted everything, right? Or she would, take off her clothes to try on something and you couldn't go. So we would say, "We don't have enough money for this item and we're just going to pick just one." Right? Like you can, and we took her to a lot of Goodwill stores where we practiced these skills. We didn't go into like,
Low key environment.
right, where there were like, no, we didn't go into Target or Walmart. We went
Yes.
into some place where there was a, low social expectation, and Maddie could pick one item, and then we taught her the concept of money. And now she'll say, "Daddy has money."
Right now she's like, "Daddy,"
"Daddy, can I
she's
have
like,
money?"
"Money, daddy." Yeah.
She wants to go buy something. So,
Just like my other daughter.
right. But but building on those interests, Maddie's interest way early on, it was, some musical instrument.
Right.
It wasn't
Mhm.
like it was something she's just banging, but I let her do it. I didn't take it away from her and make her choose colors. Like we played to those interests to help her
Right.
build skills. So I think and movement is super, super important.
Yes, movement's huge.
Movement is huge.
Because that was the other one where, the kids were like, she has a superpower, and her superpower is she can ride a ride 60 times and not get sick. Like and she just comes home very rested and relaxed. It was as if like she went on a long run. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what it takes. Yeah.
Is Leo, does he have an energy level that's super revved, or
Yeah, I mean, it
He's
varies, but
always moving,
mhm,
always
yeah,
moving,
yeah,
yeah.
Yep.
and he
yeah,
loves just to be outside. I mean, he would
yeah.
we have, like, a backpack carrier thing for hiking that he's too big for now, but we still use it, and, we take him out, and he'll just flop around and yell and drum on the top of my head and all that good stuff, like, he just loves it, and he's really like, I joked before, like, he would let me shoot him out of a cannon if I could. Like, he loves to just be flung around and flipped upside down and shaken and wrestled with, and so he really likes all that vestibular input too.
Yes.
So, does Maddie still use, like, AAC or any kind of communication devices at all, or is she pretty verbal?
She's pretty verbal now. Well, I wouldn't say pretty, but she's learned enough to tell us what she wants. We worked really hard for her to be able to tell us if something's hurting, right? Because, how many years did she go and she wasn't able to tell me that her ear hurt or her head hurt? So she keeps her iPhone with her at all times. And she uses a lot of pictures. Like if she can't find the word, she's learned to point, or she'll use some of the signs that we've taught her.
She'll pull it up on the so it's kinda
She'll
like
pull it up.
the iPhone becomes that system. So
It
Mm.
did. Yeah.
because she'll pull like, find the picture, pull it up, and I don't even know the funny thing is, because she can't type, she doesn't know letters, like, to type in, like, for a search, but somehow she, like, maybe she does the voice and navigates, gets to it, so
Yeah. And
or
she'll
she'll use the map because she kind of now aware of where it's that part's interesting. Like she can pull the map and pick and go, that's where Panda Express is, or like
and she'll pull up the map and say,
mhm,
"Let's do this. Let's go here."
yeah.
She'll hold the phone.
Or one time we had a caregiver, it was kind of a newer one, I guess, and she was driving home and she goes, I just asked Maddie how to get home, and she told me like turn here, turn there. I was like, oh, she knows how to so that's kind of
Yeah, so she uses, I mean, we do not let her be anywhere without her phone. We ask the caregivers because she's been in situations where
powers her.
I want her to be able to call us. Like, as my daughter taught her how to make phone calls and send text messages, like, she'll just do and send, right? And she's got pictures of all of the family that she can send them to. So we've simplified her phone experience, but she's highly dependent on it. She is really into music right now. Like, so she has a karaoke machine and, she goes out on a day her day program is to horses, and then one activity, like, out into the community. We take her out into the community to a restaurant. She won't necessarily go in, but we're always trying to reinforce community activities because she tends to get super isolated at home. So, but yeah, so we graduated from that tech system. But it was wonderful when we had it. So we had it on a mini iPad, and we would put her schedule in it for the day so she could know who's coming and what that schedule looked like for that day. And she was very dependent on the pictures because it was interesting. You could talk to her, but unless you showed her the pictures, she didn't understand what you were saying.
Hmm.
Right. So we would
Right.
use a lot of pictures in the Velcro pec system for her schedule, brushing teeth, getting dressed. She still lacks those skills of like order of things, right? Like you have to put socks on before you put your shoes on. And she still needs assistance with all those activities. You know, it's not everything Maddie does is assisted still,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever try, like, this is another controversial topic in the autism community, but, like, any of the spelling, like RPM or S2C or anything like that, any of those systems?
Yeah. We have not, but we
We know.
we know we've done a ton of research, and we made the appointment to go in Texas to one of the places for the rapid prompting method. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's we've had some therapists who say that's just, it's not a thing, but I've
Mm,
seen it work for kids
see, once again, like, it depends on the personality and the
where they are developmentally
interests and
interested.
capabilities of the
Yeah.
child. But I
Yeah.
see different things work for, like it's just, we're all different, right? People are different. So,
Yeah.
I could see where that would be because like, for Maddie, there seemed to be a lot of like, I could see where those type of therapies would help her map things quicker, and so
It's on our roadmap.
yeah,
I'll tell you that. Like we're not absolutely at some point going to do it. It's just a matter of when we're ready to do it as
Right.
a family.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the official, like, professional organization for speech therapists has basically written it off because there are there are some systems and some ways in which it could be manipulated. But Andrew, who we mentioned earlier, I don't know if you guys have actually listened to the show at all. But if you haven't, you should go back and listen to that episode we did with Susan. So Andrew is 25, I think. Can't remember exactly. He's roughly my age, but he spells. Um, and I talk to him all the time. I text with him and email with him. And we met him in Cincinnati a couple months ago. Like, it's clear, and Andrew, if you're listening, like, I believe you, buddy. I love you. But, like, objectively, like, if I was going to be skeptical, like, it's clear that he understands what's going on in the conversation because of the way I could see, like, when we would talk about maybe something in his life that was more difficult or for traumatic for him, he would have, like, he would start to stim more. You could tell he was having
Yes.
physical reactions to these things, and he would get excited about things that you say and stuff like that. So it was clear to me that he understood what we were saying, and Susan would tell you that the way they communicate is not best practice because he uses what's called facilitated communication. So Susan holds his hand, and she doesn't manipulate his hand at all, but she provides some back pressure that helps him feel his hand in space. And then he has a laminated keyboard that he can point to, and she interprets. And she even says too, like, she can feel in his hand, like, what letters he means to pick sometimes, or, like, based on where he's pointing at the keyboard, like, if it's a letter that he never goes to and he's over there, then he definitely meant that letter, like, that wasn't a mistake because he would never put his hand over there otherwise, and he is working on an iPad. But I don't think that it sounds like you guys believe it too, but just for our listeners, I don't think it's complete baloney as
No.
sort of
No.
some people would make it seem.
Right. There's evidence, and I don't know if it's been studied like clinically, but there's, where behaviors are almost eliminated for kids because they're finally able to communicate. And I've read a lot and studied a lot
Right.
about it, and have had friends whose kids who've excelled with it. So I think it's definitely something to I mean, at this point, I mean, what do you have to lose? I mean,
Yeah.
if you make the decision to spend that money, it doesn't mean that, you've been fraudulently deceived. It means that you made a choice as a parent to see,
Mhm,
if we depended only on ABA, we would not be where we are today.
That's
mhm.
right.
Right. And that's the only, insurance payable
Right.
therapy that's recognized by everyone, but it didn't work for Maddie. So,
Yeah,
I think that if you have to look at your own child and determine, what do you think is going to be a good fit for them and their different, abilities and levels. I think Maddie is at a point as an adult where she might have the attention span to do that, right? We might be at a good place, and we absolutely would consider it.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
do think when you're assessing those things though, and, like, Leo's almost 3, so, like, what do I know? You know what I mean? We're still very new at this, but
Yes.
in my mind, you need to err on the side of they know they're a little bit above what you think, then they're a little bit less capable of what you think, you know what I mean? Because there's been plenty of times
Right.
when he surprised us, but, like, there was one of the major news networks, there was a story the other day I saw of a nonverbal autistic guy who literally learned how to spell and went from people assuming that he had the cognitive ability of a toddler to getting into MIT in, like, 18 months.
Yeah.
Because once he had the tools to succeed, he just took off. So, obviously, that's not a typical case, but, it just shows
Right.
what is possible in some cases.
I think
Yeah.
it's absolutely possible. And I saw a girl with Rett syndrome who graduated high school and college
Mhm,
with, a similar she had I think it was the rapid prompting method, and she was able to give a speech, with it.
mhm,
And, you know, and my dad has Lewy body dementia, and he said one of the most debilitating parts of it, he said, is that he knows the words are there and he's thinking just normally inside, but he can't get it out.
right,
And I often wonder if that's what our children feel like, right? And where all the behaviors come from. It's being trapped in a world where you just can't communicate. If Maddie can sing every Disney song, the language ability is there, right? What's not mapping, in her brain? Like that's the and I think you have to find what works best for you to communicate with your child.
Mhm.
right? You have to find those ways to reach your child. We're in the philosophy of whatever it takes.
Yeah, absolutely.
He always says, no, what is it? No soldier left behind or can't
No,
leave
it's
her behind.
well, in the during all those early years and the teen years and all that, we have a text group. It's called SEAL Team 5. And so this for the family, for the kids and for us, and this we text like if we're out and about, so it's always kind of funny how
Well, because we did have to operate that way.
yeah, we had to operate
It
like
was,
that.
we kept everything so regimented just to be able to function. And when puberty hit, I really did not think we were gonna make it. Like, it was it was bad.
Right. But
It was really bad. Seizures were bad. No con I mean, it was like living in hell.
there you go.
Yeah, so puberty's it's
Very,
very encouraging.
very encouraging. There you go. But
Then, but other parents who had older children told us it doesn't last forever, and they were
right,
right. And
right,
so there is a definitely you'll see those developmental changes, right? Those they may not match other children, but you'll see the changes in your child.
right. And on that front, it's kind of like, so when you have a neurotypical child, they have those, the milestones, right? And they're progressing, 2, 5, 7, below. Well, our children they have milestones too, but you're going to be like, you're in those phases longer, but then when you switch, it's an overnight switch to the next phase.
It feels like
And
that.
so, that's what, so for us, I'm like, okay, you know, I'm good. I can do this for so many years, and all of a sudden she switches, and I'm like, "I'm not. No, I wanna do this still. I wanna
Yeah.
just we were doing this. Just
Yeah.
why are we switching?" So but it's a good thing. It's kinda funny.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about earlier about like kind of sorting to trying to I'm looking for the words here. Like in the autism community, it would be called presuming competence, like doing what you can to sort of treat her as closely as you would treat someone like, you talked about like helping foster her independence as she gets older and like as she got into like her teenage years, helping her sort of move on from sort of interests she might have had when she was young. So what are some ways that you guys have kind of attacked that?
Well, and I've heard that you're not supposed to do this, but we do. And we help her establish friendships through her caregivers. And we're very selective in who we bring into our home for Maddie. It has to be someone that because we learned the hard way that when she doesn't jive with someone, it's not
Right.
going to work.
Mm,
Right? And she tells us, like, through her behaviors, and we listen carefully. You know, she can sense when someone's not there for her, and she can sense when someone is genuinely there and cares for her, and she enjoys those people. And so we have a variety of different girls in a certain age group who, someone who shares Maddie's interest in horses. They go out and they do the grooming on a horse together, or we go out with them and they do we do the hay and
right,
the barn thing and all that stuff. Or we have someone who likes to go shopping and is really good at community connector, and they go out into the community and they go to Goodwill or they go to Target and we work on skills and we teach them how to have fun with Maddie. Like they dance, I listen to music. And so Maddie says, "Oh, that's my friend." And we have pictures of their friends. And so, that makes her feel really good about herself because she has these girls. And so I'm a big advocate of, same sex peers that, that maybe in their early 20s, early 30s, early 40s, that know how to have fun and do the things that Maddie enjoys, not just sit and watch and change diapers and,
right.
but someone who really engages with her and her interests. So that's been one strategy that we've done that's worked really well for a long time. They say you're not supposed to, to do that with your caregivers, but it works. It works for Maddie.
Well,
So,
if they're good caregivers, they end up becoming your friends anyway, in my experience, you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, I
true.
would consider all of our therapists our
Yeah,
friends. That's just the relationship. I mean, you're not,
yeah.
like, going out to dinner together, but that's, like, the relationship that a
No,
good caregiver should build anyway, so
yeah, definitely.
but it sounds like you focus a lot more on life skills than, like,
Yeah.
Do you work on things like reading or math or things like that, or
We do counting and we don't do it we've adopted it, I guess, kind of the natural verbal environment where, if I'm brushing her hair, I might say 1, I might count or, Maddie can count in Spanish. She can count, it may not be applicable to the situation, right? She may be like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then she's lost interest. She can't, count coins or she has trouble with her eye-hand coordination. She's not fully there, but she still gets physical therapy and occupational. She will get those things until 21, from a support perspective. But we don't she loves to be read to. So a lot of our care people, if they're, with us that day, they'll read to her. And she loves stories and she's got a pretty robust sense of humor like her dad. Like she's very the hard part about Maddie is she's very social. The hard part about Maddie is that she's doesn't like to go out in public and be around people. And so we have to bring that social to her in a very like we have to really construct the environment very carefully. Like she won't go and be with other special needs kids, which makes it really hard. Right, because that's her community. She won't go to the prom with all the kids. She doesn't like the vocalization. She doesn't like anything that's unpredictable. So she's
Right.
very it has to be constructed in a way for her. That's just her personality. But no, we haven't really focused on academics from that perspective. But we use a lot of the games and natural language environment to build her vocabulary. Like, we are always working on language with Madeline, always. That never stops. Never.
yeah.
And she'll say things like, "I can't read this." And she'll hand me her phone and say, "Read." She wants me to read it for her. So she understands that she can't read something. So that was an awareness that we didn't teach her. So I'm thinking
Right.
we've been talking lately about doing like further, like bringing something in that's a little more academic because she's
Right.
10, 15 years behind. So she could be ready for first grade reading level,
What
right? Kindergarten.
Yeah, I've heard from a lot of nonverbal, things I've read about nonverbal people that a lot of times they are like so thirsty for knowledge because people for a long time have been working on those, and this isn't a criticism of you guys by any means, but have been working on those
Yeah.
practical things for so long. So like things like I know Andrew really likes audiobooks and podcasts. I've heard a lot of other people say that as well. Like I heard one interview and he said like he was a speller and he told his parents, like, "I want a podcast on in this room. I want an audiobook on in this room. I want a YouTube video about some whatever, the Roman Empire, whatever, on another room. And I'm just gonna bounce around the house and try to suck up what I can from
Mm.
each of these sources." And, they
Okay.
might not look like they're paying attention to it, but they are. So,
Yes, they are.
yes, I was just curious if, sort of how you guys handled that, but
Yeah. Well,
mm,
and that's interesting because, like, I've often thought that, and we've talked about this, that maybe they learn more rapidly than their attention span
Right.
can accommodate. Because Maddie likes to have multiple things going at the same time as well. She likes to have constant YouTube videos running, and she can throw a ball out of the side of her eye and put it directly in the basket. She likes to have, like, multiple things moving and going, and she gets very bored easily. Like, she, moves very quickly through things. So,
mhm,
the biggest challenge has been trying to find things for her in this adult world,
mhm,
right? And we just happen to be in an okay season with this virtual reality. Like, they've got, virtual reality for and you can cook, and you can, learn life skills in this virtual reality. So she's highly interested in that. And so if she's interested, and my son introduced it to her and said, I think Maddie would really like something that she could go into and do all these things. She doesn't have to use, like her pincher. She doesn't have to do any kind of writing. She can't hold a pen and pencil. We tried for 15 years to get her to do all those things. And she shows absolutely zero interest or ability in it right now. So, we're in a season with the virtual reality. We'll see how far we can go with it. I don't know. right? And she's learning to regulate herself with it, um, as well. So there's things that she's learning in that environment that's great. You know, she doesn't watch TV. We sometimes can take her to a movie.
Yes, he's not a big movie watcher. You know, like,
No,
she won't sit and watch,
no,
any movie, but then, like, the YouTube videos or things about actual things that are happening with other people in life, she
she's
watch.
interested.
Right.
Like, we do fire drills, like, part of her residential requirement is, like, to do a fire drill. Well, I'll pull up YouTube videos of people escaping fires in a house so she can
Right.
visually see it, you know? There's a lot of visual things that we try to do to keep her, you know, engaged, but she doesn't she gets bored with books, and we used to do books on tape, but she's ready to move on to the next thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is like the information is too slow. Because even when she listens to songs, like, she's, like, does the, like, skip ahead or,
Mhm.
Yeah,
repeats certain parts, moves to another song, it's not like she's playing full album or,
right,
like full song.
right.
So it's kind of interesting. But then
Yeah.
so that's the part that was weird to me, is like she's jumping around all these songs, but then when she sings, she knows all these songs. I'm like, "How in the world do you know all the lyrics?" So it's kind of interesting, yeah.
Yeah,
But that's just
I have a friend who's s he's originally from Kentucky, but he lives in Cyprus. And so his son lives in a bilingual house. He speaks Greek
mhm,
and English. Well, his son's autistic and very limited verbal, but he's picked up, like, he's not completely fluent, but he can write bits and pieces in about 20 different languages just
okay,
from things that he's seen. So it does seem like there are certain things where, like, they just have to see it once.
Yeah,
Like, if you
right,
watch a foreign film and it's in French, like, they don't know French, the entire language, but they know every word that was in that movie now. You know what I
right.
mean? So it does seem like
Yes.
they have the ability to lock in, and I remember seeing a video of a younger kid. I w I've tried to look it up a couple times because I wanted to interview them too, but of a younger kid who couldn't talk with Mef2C, but could sing. So that does apparently seem to be, there might be some generalization there.
Yeah, and if I we have video of Madeline, if I think we're friends on Facebook, and I don't even know what's out there, but I think that there are some videos out there of Madeline singing a bunch of different songs, like, it's like a 3-hour concert, you know, that she
right.
can sing, right?
Yeah.
That's
And
funny.
so, yeah, it's definitely another part of the brain that's activated. I don't know how it works, but I think exposing our kids in the MEF2C world to music is nothing but advantageous. If you can and they tolerate it, I think it's definitely a benefit for
Mhm.
development.
Has your I know from looking at a little bit of Facebook, and you mentioned it, that your other daughter's a musician. Has your other daughter tried, like, writing any songs to sort of cater to, um, Madeline in that way?
Yeah, well,
Well,
she
it doesn't have to cater, that's the fun I mean,
she writes a lot of songs. Maddie knows all of her songs
yes.
and sings them,
I see.
and she
I
wrote
meant Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just meant
yeah,
more of, like, maybe there's a specific situation or skill that you were trying to work on with Maddie, and maybe
yes.
is it
We've written
Meredith?
some
Is that your other daughter's name?
yes, that's
Yeah,
Meredith.
Yeah,
Meredith.
yeah, maybe Meredith could write a song that would for that specific thing, that would help Maddie
Yes.
learn.
We did that for toileting.
I was just thinking that,
We have the
like,
potty song.
right, 'cause that's right, she did go, "I think it's time to go potty,"
Yeah,
or
we wrote
whatever.
songs for potty, we wrote songs for getting in the car because that was always an issue,
Right,
staying buckled was an issue,
right, that's true.
taking a
Mhm,
bath was an issue. Yeah, there's a lot of the behavior things that we, you know, Maddie was the great escape artist when it came to sitting in her seatbelt. She couldn't, and we got the big harness system, you know, like,
Yes.
she was tethered in and harnessed in, and she could still wiggle her way out. She would end up completely without clothes on, but she was out of that by the time the trip ended, so we had songs for all of those. Meredith was very good at doing that and using music in different ways, yeah.
gotcha. Does Maddie walk pretty much everywhere now? Do you need to use, like, a chair for her at all, or
Yeah.
No, we had a adaptive stroller for many years because
McLaren.
yeah, she had trouble.
Right.
She has trouble with steps,
Gotcha.
but she walks. She's pretty mobile. She's never been, she's been able to walk. There were times she was able to run. She does fall a lot.
Mm,
She has a lot of falls. And then when she's in a new environment, she has trouble seeing the floor. So she kind of she and sometimes we wonder if that's why she doesn't like going out in public. You have to hold her arm, she can't really just go out into a brand new store, you know,
mm,
'cause she it's like she can't multitask, like, see where she's going and then look at the things, right? But no, she's not in a chair or anything like that. She does have she's mobile.
Got That's awesome.
She needs what about Leo? Is he in a chair
He is starting to walk a little bit on his own. You can
at
catch him every
3?
once. What's that?
He's 3?
Almost. He'll be 3 next
Okay.
month. Yeah. He'll every once in a while, you'll catch him, and, like, you can coax him if you have the appropriate, incentives to walk a little
Yeah,
bit, and then,
right.
like, I think probably just because he's so used to us carrying him around, like, it's harder for us to get him to walk. But, like, in my parents' house the other day, he apparently, like, was standing next to the couch and just turned around and walked to my dad's recliner to him because he wanted to, but he
Right,
can't
yeah,
yeah, he can't, like, just stand up from the floor. He's still gotta pull himself up on something and lean and then walk, but
right.
yeah.
And he
Mhm.
has low muscle tone, like the
Yeah.
hypotonia. Yeah.
Mm. Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's why Maddie it was the same. She wasn't fully walking at that age,
Mm.
unassisted, so it took a while.
Yeah.
Does Leo have a trampoline?
He does. We haven't put him on it here in a while. My mom has one. She keeps him during the summer. I mean, she's a special
Okay.
needs teacher, and she's really good. It
Okay.
works out really well. She
Yeah.
does a lot of work with him, so I don't know, she might have worked
Yeah.
with him a lot, but he does love water too, the way you said
Yeah.
Maddie does.
Really?
Yeah. They just
That's
got a
interesting.
pool too. That's not like a universal experience, but it's more common than not from what I've heard from
Okay.
parents, yeah. So, shoot, there was something else I was gonna say and I forgot what it was. Haley's fighting a cold, so she went upstairs to bed.
Okay.
it's alright.
Sorry about
Okay.
that. We'll, ask a few more questions here and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
So, we kinda talked about this a little bit, um, but what would you say are the hardest parts of being Maddie's parents, and then what are the sort of best or most rewarding parts of being Maddie's parents?
I know, like, I think we covered that earlier, but
I
I
think the
don't know.
hardest
Yeah.
part is the loss of family and time,
Mm,
right? Like, I mean, we've lost our other 2 children. Like, we did not get to have family and time with the other 2 kids, and we know that the future is a lot of the same unless we can afford, caregivers for every holiday and, what's it gonna be like when we have grandkids and if we do, so I think it's been the loss. And the greatest part of for me, having Maddie is, like my husband said earlier, seeing that that pure love, right?
right.
Like seeing God in her. I think it's just it's like seeing the other side of the moon and you can never look back. You can't ever see life. We've given up everything, every pursuit, every dream, everything, just so we can support her. And it's just what we did. So that's been the rewarding part, I guess. What has it been for
I
you?
don't know, I know, that's pretty much the same. I'm just trying to think of, because yeah, I mean, for her, I mean, people talk about love, but it's like, I think until Maddie came along, it's not, it's like she's like a window to heaven is the way I explain it to people. It's like you don't really see, it's almost like the, mind of God or something, like, because she's on a completely different agenda and all she cares about is love. That's her
Mhm.
language. And it's interesting to see somebody in this world operate like that, and it makes you like, okay, maybe there's some things that aren't as important as I thought they were. And then later on, there's a lot of gifts and benefits gained by operating in her world, so to speak, if that makes any sense. But it's kind of, yeah, that's interesting from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. We had a different family on who said very similar things about, they talked about how, and I'm not super religious, but how God calls them to see the face of Jesus in everybody, and their son Richmond is like maybe the purest reflection of that they've been able to see. You know what I mean? Like it,
Right.
and
And that is absolutely
by interacting with him, you are able to better see that in other people as well.
Right.
Um,
or not see it,
yeah,
or to
right.
see that it's that unconditional pure love, it does exist, right? Like Maddie is, and I'm sure a lot of these kids are. There's not an ill, maybe they do have an ill thought. I don't know, they can't express it, but um
Yeah. Yeah, and the other note we've been hitting on the show a lot lately is like it's this having someone with MEF2C is an adventure. It's a call to adventure, and it's not the problem with adventures is we kind of think of them as things that are sort of fun and that we take on willingly, and that's almost never the case. Like most
Right.
sort of hero narratives throughout history, the hero doesn't necessarily want to go on whatever quest that they've been saddled with, and they usually suffer pretty terribly in the process of it, but it's worth it in the end. All you can do is that's not to say that having a child with this condition is all it is suffering, but
it's pretty close.
all you can
But
do
I
is embrace it,
right.
um,
Yes, you can't, right.
yes, and try to
And
get what you
Right.
can
yes.
out of it. And the other thing I bring up a lot too is because this is so relatively new. I mean, it's not as nearly as uncommon as it seems to be right now. I mean, the estimates are anywhere that I've seen between 1 in 30,000 people and 1 in 3,000 people um,
Okay.
that actually have some MEF2C impacting condition. So, but my point is, like, the things that we do now with, like, research and things have the potential like, each individual person has an inordinately large potential to impact literally thousands of people down the road through doing things like sharing their data and participating in studies if you can, and it's sharing your experiences. So, like, we all have an opportunity to really help a lot of people
Yeah,
in the immediate and distant future. So,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's I can't think of the word I'm trying to say, but
Oh, yeah, and then if our walk with Maddie, I mean, and we're moving, into deep into the adult, we're headed into big,
Right.
adult, and, if there's anything that we can offer younger parents, it's just it would be that I know I've read on the page that a lot of parents feel hopeless about language,
mhm,
and we did too. We felt that way,
Right.
right? We didn't know that Maddie would ever develop the language that she has, right? And I would say never give up or ever think that because of MEF2C, these things are not possible, So
Right.
I would attack it from every angle that you're capable of doing, like within your family, and abilities.
Right. The neurologist said, "Oh, she'll never have speech." And, now, my daughter and my son are like, she'll, say a cuss word or something that she learned on her, gorilla tag virtual reality. And they're like, and I go, we all look at each other and laugh because we think about the neurologist and we're like, it's a miracle,
Yeah, it is.
that she could
And
even,
for us, I mean, in
it's
our
funny.
family, everything we've always approached Maddie's, it's always been in prayer. And
Right.
it's always been in alignment, and it is intricately integrated into our faith,
Right.
right? Like, every part of it has been a walk in our faith. Like, it is nothing but that, and it became that, right? We were believers before, but we are completely different kind of believers now.
Yeah.
And what has happened in Maddie's life, like, I we really could write a book on
Yeah.
our experiences with her. Um, it's been a miracle, really. It
Right.
really has.
We're like before we were like academic believers, if that makes any sense. And this is like, okay, now it all makes sense.
Yeah.
But from that perspective, I'm really excited for you because your journey is beginning. And it's gonna be it's like you said, we call it an adventure afterwards.
Yeah.
That it has been an adventure. Like not many people get to go through that or see that. So I'm excited for you.
You've got a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, we're excited too. So, what are your hopes for Maddie's future?
So he's gonna have a miniature horse farm and it's gonna be, who can reach other because that's the other thing. You talked about math. I remember like back when we did have the miniature horses and she was going 8 hours a day. That's what she wanted, and she was doing math problems with the horses and things like that. So we often thought about, when we finally have the ability of time and resources, we would, create something like that, and then Maddie would be a part of that because that's what her big joy is. That
Her joys and animals.
right, animals and seeing other and she likes to see other kids, uh, are happy and doing things. Because in that setting, she could be with other kids because the horse was bigger than the kid, if that makes sense, you know what I mean?
Mm,
The space, the energy, I guess, so she could have friends that way and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, but we see her being an inspirational story to other people. It's kind of funny, there was a couple of times, we didn't have quite the time and ability, like you talked about when we visited Dr. Cowan, and we interacted with some other parents who, and and it's really funny because it's like it was sort of guarded. I didn't know what to tell them or not tell them at that time. But then, uh, I guess Maddie called us at that moment with her phone, and he just broke down crying, saying, "Okay, so your child can do that." Like, and I
They
for
didn't know.
right, and I forgot in a certain way the early years, because the adventure got so big that, so, but then I told him, I said, "Yeah, no, it's." I go, "Right, I mean, right now it may feel, you know, like it's not working out, but you're gonna have, I mean, she's gonna have a life and there's a lot more capabilities." And so I'm thinking that from that perspective, Maddie being an inspirational story to others who can embrace that.
Well, and talking is not the I mean, I know, it was my prayer for a long time that Maddie could say, "I love you," back, right? Because she was awash in a lot of love from all of our family. We love Maddie, but she could never say it back, and one day she did, right? But it's not the gold standard. Some kids may not develop language, but they do have their own way of expressing it, right?
Right.
And those should be celebrated. Like, I think that, just whatever those parents can do to bring those skills to life, right? Like, if that's the one thing, like, maybe they can express love, with a certain vocalization or
Right.
maybe not. Whatever it is, that's a milestone, right? It's a hope. We have lots of hopes for her, but, we hope that we live to 95.
Oh,
And there's always that fear, we think a lot about that now because 'cause we're both in our late 50s, and
that's young.
we think a lot about, what's gonna happen when we're not here to advocate for her and to, you know, what that's gonna be like. So we're slowly moving her program into more independence, right? I don't want us to pass and she's immediately put into a placement, right?
right.
So, we think about that a lot. That's what keeps us up at night, and, it's our I think every parent worries about that.
Yeah, I mean, we worry about that now and we're
Yeah,
both under 30, so
right. Yeah,
yeah. And then, talking about her becoming an inspiration, I don't think that anyone should look at any other given, well, I mean, person in general, not just MEF2C otherwise, but like they should look at Maddie as a testament to what's possible. And maybe your kid will never get there. Maybe your kid will get further than Maddie did. But if they can derive some motivation out of that and use that to keep going, then they'll
Right.
end up further than they would have if they hadn't. And that's what's important.
That's right.
So,
absolutely, yeah. That's a good
yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, thank you guys very much for your time and your insight. To all our listeners, we just launched our website. It's mef2cast.com. We're excited about that. We have our Printify shop. If you want to get t-shirts or anything, support the show, that would be great. And as always, you can find us on Facebook, or you can email us at mef2cast@gmail.com. And if you'd be interested in being a guest, we have a form you can fill out on the website. So check that out. All righty. Well, thanks again, Jennifer and Keith, and have a good day.
Thank
That was
you. It
nice.
was great
Yeah.
talking to you.